I got super specific and only pitched people who had the same audience as my summit. And that made all of the difference. My affiliates were so much more effective, and they were all so much more excited to share because it's their people. So that was the difference there. That was $60,000 just in all access pass sales.
You're tuned in to the Event Gems podcast, the podcast where coaches, consultants, and speakers learn how to produce transformational and profitable events. I'm your host, Natasha Wright, Chief Experience Curator at the Diamond Butterfly. Join me and other industry experts as we teach you how to maximize the power of your next brand building event. Time to drop those gems. Let's fly.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Event Gems. I am your host, Natasha Wright, Chief Experience Curator at the Diamond Butterfly. And today I am so excited for this conversation with Krista Miller. She's a web developer. She's a founder of the Summit in a Box. And she also has an amazing Facebook group called Summit Host Hangout, which I'm a part of. So be sure to check that out. Hey, Krista, welcome. Thank you for being here with me today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to nerd out about events with you. It's going to be fun.
Yay! So today the topic is how to grow your list and build brand awareness with virtual summits. So Krista, I'm an event manager, and most of the events that I planned were in person. And so of course, as a result of COVID, I had to shift and pivot and start doing some of those things online, which is how I ended up finding you, I think through a Facebook ad. And then quite a few of my friends who are also business owners, they were like, hey, like you need to make sure that you're following Krista. You need to get into her Facebook group. And I'm like, okay, I'm already in there. But, that just goes to show that whatever you were doing with your marketing and your Facebook ads, it was working because, people were reaching out to me and say, hey, you definitely want to make sure that you connect and you be a part of the community. So thank you so much for creating that awesome community. So like I was saying, for me, I never really played in the virtual world before with events. And so it was exciting for me to be able to discover you and learn information from you about how to plan virtual summits and virtual events. But can you talk about what is the difference between virtual summits versus a virtual event versus a virtual conference? And are there any differences?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I love this question. And there are so many different routes you can take with virtual events. So there are differences between the different kinds. So if someone were to just say a virtual event, I would ask them for more information because that could be anything from like a webinar where it's just you selling something on a one-off thing to a virtual summit to anything else out there. You'll also hear the term virtual conference. And in my world, when I hear conference, to me, that means a paid event. So people pay to register to get their ticket, be able to have access to everything. And that's how that one works, just like kind of like an in-person conference you'd go to. We might hear about an expo or trade show where that's not something I have any experience with, but I see that more as something where people are coming to sell their things. It might be you with the sole purpose of letting people learn about your thing, or you might bring in vendors to talk about whatever it is they sell. And then we have the virtual summit, which is my area of expertise and what I do my teaching on. So a virtual summit is free for people to register, which is why it's so powerful for growing your email list and getting those leads into your business. Because who doesn't want to sign up for something with all of this free education? And then afterwards, there's an opportunity to monetize with an all access pass where people can get the recordings for those presentations with some other fun bonuses that I always recommend throwing in there. And then from there, you can transition them to whatever your other products, services, offers look like from there. So all different kinds of routes you can take with virtual events as a whole, but virtual summits are definitely my favorite.
Yeah. So I know that you were a service provider prior to you planning your first virtual summit. So why did you decide to, first of all, like give us, let's backtrack a little bit, give us a little bit more information about your background. Like where were you before you started your first, or before you planned your first virtual summit? And why did you decide to plan your first virtual summit?
Yeah. So when I decided to plan my first virtual summit, that was back in 2017, and I was doing WordPress development for website designers. So all I did was one-on-one services. And I was to the point where my business was successful. Like I was making the money I wanted to make each month, like $3,000 to $4,000 a month. That was like my ultimate goal when I first started. So I was like, cool, I made it, but also now what? Like now that I'm here, I want something more. As for like getting clients, I was kind of booking clients right as I needed them. So I would wrap up a project and then the next day I'd be like, okay, hope another client comes in the door. And then like magically that email would pop in, who knows how. So, you know, I had consistent clients, but I was never booked out. And I just wanted that next step. I wanted to be connected with other people in my industry. I want it to be so when a designer said, hey, I need a developer, people were like, go to Krista. But I just wasn't that well known. I had a tiny email list between 400 and 500 people on it, not much on social media. So like, I was like small potatoes in the online business world, and I wanted to go to that next step. And a virtual summit was one of those things I thought might get me there. I was also terrified though. So I had thought of hosting a summit for a very long time. It was probably going on a year, but I kept thinking things like, you know, I literally had dreams of my speakers sitting at their desk laughing at me when I pitched them.
No.
Yeah, like terrible. You know, I thought I would put the summit out into the world and no one would care. But I eventually like decided, okay, it's time to happen. I had my first baby on the way. So I was like, you know, as a one-on-one service provider, if I go on maternity leave, I'm not going to be making any money. So how am I going to take 2-3 months off, come back and make that back? So I planned that first summit. So right after maternity leave, which I do not recommend, that first summit happened and it worked. My goal with that summit was to make $2,000-$3,000, get a couple hundred new people on my email list. And instead it brought in $16,000, tripled my email list, booked me out for 6 months in advance with clients. And it was like, you know, the heavens opening up, being like, here is this incredible opportunity that more people need to take advantage of.
And when I heard you say that, I'm like, yes. First of all, you are super brave for planning a summit while you're on maternity leave. Because I know I don't have any kids, but I know for a lot of my friends who do have kids, like that's, you know, as a new mom, it's a learning process, it's a learning curve. And then here you are with a new baby as well that you have to tend to and take care of. So, you know, I commend you and I applaud you for even doing that. That is amazing.
It was wild. I only did it because I didn't know what I was getting myself into.
And I think that is like the story of a lot of entrepreneurs, right? You really don't even know what you're going to get yourself into until you get started. And you're like, wait a minute, this is not what I thought it was going to be, you know, but you learn and you take the steps necessary and you go through the process and you realize, okay, I'm built for this. I could do it.
Yes.
You know, I just need to plan better next time around, strategize better next time around, and make it better. You did an amazing job for your first summit. You made $16,000. So the summit is a free summit, and then you have this all access pass. Can you talk about why that's important and how can that help with converting?
Yeah, for sure. So I think the free summit is extremely important, especially if you don't already have a huge audience, because that's where you're going to get that audience at first. Your conversion rate is going to be so much higher for people who sign up if it's free to attend. So my first summit, I had 1,400 people that signed up. If it was a paid event, I would have been surprised if I had 20, you know, my speakers wouldn't, like, people don't want to share a paid event as much because it's not as easy to say, hey, I have something free for you. You know, I have something paid. It's a big difference promoting something free versus paid. So that's why I recommend the free summit. And then the all access pass can convert really well because with the free summit, you give them access to presentations for 24, 48 hours, whatever feels good to you. And they're going to these presentations and they're like, I want more. That was so incredible. I want to be able to reference that again in the future, things like that. So that's why it works so well, because it's tied in with the event. To get good conversions on an all access pass, though, you do need more than just ongoing access to presentations. So I like to include some bonuses like maybe worksheets and notes for the presentations, which are a lot of work. So I don't feel like anyone needs to do that for the first time. I like to include some live sessions like co-working and networking sessions. So my attendees have a chance to kind of get to know each other like they would if it was an in-person event. And then the big seller and big conversion rate booster are asking your speakers for bonuses. So one of the summits I host is for designers. So my speakers, I make sure they all target designers so that they can contribute, you know, maybe a month in their membership for designers or a proposal template or, you know, these different bonuses that this audience wants. So they go to this sales page and they see this fairly low priced offer with all of these incredible bonuses. So they're like, Heck yes, I want that. So for myself and my students, that kind of offer usually converts between 10 and 20%. It just kind of depends on how specific your audience is. The more specific your audience is, the better that's going to convert. But since it's so well tied in to the event that people already signed up for, that's why it's such a natural transition to be like, hey, you signed up for this free thing. Here's another offer I have for you.
And is there a value amount then that you would ask for your speakers to put in that bonus or bundle offer? And what's like a sweet spot for them to offer to attendees?
Yeah, so basically the only rule I give them is that it can't be a freebie that someone can find on their website. So right. I have people contribute a $27 tiny offer. I've had someone contribute like a $997 product before. And I was like, thank you. Like that's like above and beyond. But really anything adds up as long as it's specific to what that audience that you're hosting the summit for will actually want. So typically with about 30 speakers is where I'm usually sitting for my summits. My bonuses end up adding up to like $3,000 in extra value, which is crazy to be like, here's this, let's say $97 offer with over $3,000 just in bonuses. It definitely adds up. So the only rule I give my speakers though is that it can't be a freebie because I don't want to like be selling a freebie vault basically.
Right, exactly, because that they could pretty much get from anywhere, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
One of the things that you spoke about is like niching down your audience and how that also helps with conversion. Can you talk about how to niche? Because you've spoken a lot about, well, don't just say service providers, don't just say creative entrepreneurs. So how do you niche down your audience, number one? And then can you give us some examples of how to, or what the topic should be, right? So instead of creative entrepreneurs, like what should that be?
Yes, this is like one of my favorite things to get on my soapbox about, you know that. But yeah, so we see so many summits out there for online business owners, creative business owner, moms, women, professionals. That is not enough. If you're like scrolling on Facebook and you see an ad to help online business owners grow their business, you're not going to care about that unless you're like a very new baby business owner. So that's why you need to get more specific so that someone will see someone mention your summit. They'll see an ad about your summit and be like, oh my gosh, I have to be a part of that. So step one there is, like you said, niching down that audience. So if you do target online business owners, creatives, a wider audience like that for your main business, that is okay. That's who I target here at Summit in a Box. It's like, basically, if you have an online business and you want it to grow, you're my audience, I would never host a summit for that audience. So because I know it's not going to convert. So instead, what you're going to do is take the audience of your business as a whole and break it down into some categories and see if any of those categories kind of like feel good or hit home for you. So for me, I might break my audience down to course creators, service providers, which is still, both of those are still a little broad, but we'll just go with this. Membership site owners, podcasters, things like that. And then choose one of those more specific audiences to host your summit for. And then like the service provider example that I gave. Okay, we can break that down even farther. We could do developers, designers, photographers, coaches. You know, you get as specific as you can. And even again, coaches, that's really broad. What kind of coach? The more specific you can get, the more you can write copy and craft your summit to grab their attention. And just in like what your summit's actually going to be about. If you do a summit like for all online business owners, it basically has to be grow your business because that's all they have in common. Where instead I host one of my summits for designers. So I can teach them how to handle their clients, how to deal with it when clients, you know, just send them way too many revisions, how to design in certain ways, how to use design programs. I'm able to get so much more specific with my topics that it just makes it a heck yes offer. So the more specific you get, the more you're going to run into something like that. And the easier it's going to be to make your summit, and then the better it's going to convert once you have it up and running.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think so. My partner and I, we plan a style and beauty expo. And when it's in person, it's pretty much where you can, you know, we can have like these different segments. You know, we can have people who are into style and beauty and kind of like have different breakout rooms or places for them to go to enjoy that type of conversation. We can have a fashion show, and then we could like specifically talk to people who are in the styling industry or people who are in the beauty industry. But I think that when you're doing it online, you know, you're pretty much in this one virtual space. And so I think as we transition to virtual this year, that information was really helpful for us to think about, well, we can't have the same audience that we had before for an in-person event. We have to really like niche it down and be more specific. And now we actually, with it being virtual, we can actually reach a wider amount of people than the geographic location that we're in. So I want to talk about building your email list. So you talked about how you were able to triple your email list. You started with 500, and then for your first event, you were able to grow your email list to 1,400. And I'm sure that now your list has completely exploded. But can you talk about what's the importance of building an email list? I would love to get your input on why it's important to have an email list, and also how that has like transformed your business now that your email list is larger from summit to summit.
Yeah. So, thinking back to when I had a small email list, like I got by, but now that I have a bigger one, life is just easier. It is so nice to have a list of people who want to hear from you, who like what you have going on, who actually care when you have something to give them or just something to say, something to sell them, whatever it is. It gives you so much freedom in your business. And like at Summit in a Box, I still run a lot of Facebook ads, but when I started this business, it was all Facebook ads. To make money, I was just throwing money at Mark Zuckerberg to be like, send me people who will buy my stuff. And I'll just tell you, it's way nicer to have a list with thousands of people on it. So when I have something of mine or someone else's that I want them to know about, I can send them an email, add some value, give them that offer, and just have people interested and happy to be like, yes, I will take that. So I think it just gives you so much freedom. And same with the service-based business. For my development studio, if I have openings that I want to fill for that, which doesn't really happen anymore because I don't focus on that business as much, but it was so nice to be like, hey, I have openings coming up in the next couple months. If you're interested, fill out this waitlist form here, and actually have people sign up for it. The first couple times I was like, what is happening? This is magic. People actually care.
I'm not used to this.
Yeah,
it's a new level.
Exactly. It's just so nice to have that interest.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that is pretty cool because it shows your trajectory and how your business has completely transformed. And I think here at Event Gems, like that's one of the things that I really want to drive home is how events can support your business. It could help you to boost your brand, to boost your authority figure. And then speaking of authority figure, so I know one of the things that you talk about is that you should show up for your summits, right? You should do a presentation. You should let people know who actually put this event on. Why is that important, like building your authority figure? Why is that important to even be a part of the event?
Yeah. So I have totally been a part of a summits before where I sign up and, I go to it and then afterwards I'm like, who hosted that? Like, I don't want to be that person. I don't want anyone else to be that person. If you're hosting a summit to build your brand, make money, grow an email list of people who will buy from you later, they have to know who you are. You have to use that event to build trust with the new audience you're getting through all of your speakers sending their audience to you. So showing up is so important, even if you are an introvert. I am a huge introvert. On like every test I've taken, I get like 99.9% introverted. Like I will go like lay in the bed for a while later,
Yeah,
but
I totally get it.
So important. And I think, even though when I say that, people are like, oh my gosh, like, no, I can't show up. I'm an introvert. I don't want to. It's so much easier than an in-person event because, I'm thinking of you being at one and I'm like, oh my gosh, having to show up for days in front of all of these people constantly, like, oh, I just can't.
It's a lot. And then you feel like you need to recharge your batteries.
Yes,
like,
exactly.
I've been people in for too long.
Yes. And the power of a summit is that you can pre-record a lot of it. And
exactly.
Space it out over months and months. Record the video for your registration page and put it on there. The next week, record your presentation and upload it to where you want it to be. And then, you're just showing up during the promotion period when you're able to, during the live event. If you want to do a couple, pop-up lives here and there, that's cool too. But there's no pressure to show up at specific times like there is with a live event. And it just gets you so much further and people know who you are. Like with the summit I hosted in September 2020, the goal of the summit was to sell our Summit in a Box program. If they didn't know who I was and I pitched them for that program on day 5 of the summit, they're going to be like, I'm not giving you $2,000. I don't know who you are. But instead, they had seen me showing up. I had been pouring into these people, loving the heck out of them, teaching them my ways about Summit, so that when I did that, I did a webinar on the last day of the Summit, the people that came live converted at 41% for a $2,000 product. That would not have happened if I was like hiding behind the scenes. So that's why building that trust and showing up is so important.
So no hiding behind the computer screen. Show up to your event. Even if you're an introvert, make sure that you show up. And I think that's such an important point, that with a summit, the difference with the summit and a live event is that you can actually pre-record, which I think is such a huge bonus, especially for introverts, is that you can pre-record the video. So it's whenever you're up for it, whenever you can muster up that energy or courage or whatever it is that you need to get it together, then you can pre-record those videos. Is there a difference with even how the information is shared for when it's pre-recorded versus live? And have you done live presentations as well, or a mixture of live presentations?
Yeah, so I have never done a fully live summit before because of what we just talked about and the fact that that would be too much for me. I have seen really incredible live events put on by people. The reason I kind of stay away from live events, and especially if you're a first-time host, I would urge you to watch out for live events. It is hard to get your speakers to cooperate and show up when they're supposed to and do what you want them to do.
Let the church say amen.
So like, relying on every single one of them to show up when they're supposed to, and no tech glitches and everything to just work perfectly for your first event when you're still figuring out yourself, is a lot. And for me, that's still like, I still don't want to deal with that. I have done live panels before. So, most of my presentations are pre-recorded. I do have a chat box on the page for like an hour for each presentation. So the speakers can come in and the attendees can come in and chat with them. But other than that, I've just had like one live panel per day in a couple events. And I love that. I have speakers tell me if they want to be a part of it. They volunteer, which I feel like maybe increases the likelihood that they'll actually show up, and they all have. And like, you can't beat the engagement and excitement that a live presentation brings. Like, no matter what you do with a pre-recorded event, it's just not going to match it. But people still get a ton of value out of pre-recorded, and it makes your life and your speakers' lives a whole lot easier. So, it's kind of a give and take.
Yeah. And I definitely agree with you around just wrangling speakers. It's the same thing with the live events, just making sure that, constantly following up, constantly sending reminders, and also reminders about sharing the event. How do you deal with that? And do you see a difference with the types of speakers that you have on the event, and also the amount of times that they share? And how do you structure that so that they actually share, everyone spread the message to their audience? How do you deal with speaker management?
Yeah, so I am not a huge fan of sending pitches where it's like, to be a part of the summit, you have to send 3 solo emails and post on Instagram 3 times and do 5 backflips and go tell your mom about it, and like all these things that just
not the 5 backflips.
I know, right? I can't even do that. I do think it's important though to set the precedent that this is only going to succeed if you guys help me out. So when I am pitching speakers, in the first email they get from me, I do say, you will be expected to send 1 email and post once on social media. That's all I require of them, is just talking about it 1 time. And then from there, a lot of them go way above and beyond, especially when you pitch speakers that have the same audience as your summit and you're giving them affiliate commissions. So when they're sharing, they're seeing people sign up, they're getting paid for people signing up, and they're like, oh, I'll go send another email. Okay. They're actually benefiting from sharing. So that's a big part of it. Also, the way they feel about you and the event is going to have a big part to play in it as well. Like, to be honest, if I'm pitched by someone I've never heard of before, I don't feel much of a connection throughout the process of like getting them what they need, making my presentation. I will do the bare minimum. Where if it's, someone I know, someone who is like gone above and beyond, one of my friends, I will shout about that from the rooftops as long as my people keep responding properly, or positively, I guess I should say. So, you got to make it so they can benefit. Let them know up front that it's expected, but connection plays a huge part of it as well. Like when they feel connected to you, they'll go harder for you. And I guess one more thing I should say is making it easy for them. So writing the emails for them, writing social media posts, making graphics, telling them where to share and when to share it. That's another huge part too.
Yeah, for sure. When you take that guesswork out, it's definitely easier for people to share. Then how do you build that connection? Let's say you do the cold outreach and they agree. Like, how do you build that connection as you're going through the process of planning the summit and ensuring, like you said, that they feel that connection with you or that they're invested also in your success?
Yeah, so I really try to focus on treating them all like people and not only reaching out to them when I need something. I don't want every email I send the speaker to be like, where's your bio? Where's your presentation? Reminder, I need this from you next week. No, every single email starts with something positive. Like, thank you so much for being a part of it. I'm so excited to have you. Like, some emails I'll go in and customize for certain people. If I, saw on social media that they're doing this cool thing so that there is some personal connection. Also, when I am not like in my little introvert cave, I will record a video that kind of says what's in my emails too, so they can see my face and feel that connection as well. But I'm staying connected with them on a regular basis. So once I have my speakers lined up, I usually email them at a minimum of once per week. I try to keep it between 1 and 2. Usually it's once per week, just keeping them updated. Even if it's like, I don't really need anything from you right now, but just wanted to let you know where we're at. Here's a link to the updated registration page. This is so cool. I just decided to add this fun feature. Letting them know how excited you are and just showing them how much you're putting into the event really helps. I have seen people like try to do speaker meet and greet type things, where they invite all the speakers onto a Zoom call or whatever. As like a speaker, I've always, when I'm invited to those things, I'm like, I don't really want to go, so I've never done anything like that myself. But if that fits your personality type, that's a great way to get to know people too.
Love it. Those are awesome gems. Thank you so much for sharing that. So now we're just going to kind of close out with the money, right? So I think sometimes, as business owners, we don't necessarily want to say that we're in it for the money, but we're in it for the money because at the end of the day, like we want to be able to make an impact. We want to be able to help our family. We want to be able to transform our lives and also transform the person's lives who come in contact with us, right? So I know when we were talking initially about your first summit, you said that you made $16,000. And I know that you're also like really transparent and sharing like what your revenue take is from each one of your summits. So can you talk about the revenue that you've made from each one of your summits and what do you think attributed to you being able to make more?
Yeah, I love it. Love it. So that first one, like I said, brought in $16,000. That was with like a teeny tiny audience, less than 500 people. It worked. My second summit tanked and I made less than $3,000. And I'll tell you why that happened. It was because I tried to get cute and creative with the topic of the summit and it didn't speak to something my people actually needed anymore. And it didn't work. And I'm really glad it didn't because now I can teach other people that and be like, don't try to be cute because otherwise you're going to crash and burn.
Forward.
The next summit I came back. So I fixed that issue. I went back to the same topic as the first summit and brought in $22,000. I think the difference was just that I started with a bigger audience that second time around and I was able to, or I shouldn't say able to, brave enough to pitch slightly bigger speakers here and there. Mm-hmm. Then the fourth time hosting that summit brought in $60,000. So we jumped from $22,000 to $60,000. And the difference with that one. Yeah, that
pause right there for the $60,000. For the jump from 22 to 60. Yeah. That is amazing. And did you have sponsors or was that just purely from revenue from the ticket sales and all access passes?
Yeah, it was purely all access pass. I will tell you the one difference was that I figured out how important it was to pitch the right speakers. That was the only difference I made. Oh, and I increased my price a little bit of the all access pass, but I pitched about 90% speakers who also were targeting designers. I wasn't pitching people who targeted creative entrepreneurs, even though there are some designers in there. I got super specific and only pitched people who had the same audience as my summit. And that made all of the difference. My affiliates were so much more effective and they were also much more excited to share it because it's their people. So that was the difference there. That was $60,000 just in all access pass sales. And then my most recent event was for a different audience. Those were all the same summit. The fifth one was a totally different summit, for Summit in a Box for a different audience and all that good stuff. And this one was a little bit different. So in all access pass sales, we only brought in $15,000. But then in the course launch, I put right on the back end of the summit and built it into the summit. That made $63,000. So we ended up at $78,000 through that summit. So, you know, it's cool to see how those two things work together. Since the audience was broader and I wasn't able to pitch specifically speakers who talked to that audience, I knew the summit was going to be smaller in itself, but because of the way we positioned the summit to complement the course, my hope was that it would convert on the back end, and it did. So yeah,
I think that that's such an important point, because it's basically, you're saying like there's two ways, like two substantial ways that you can make money. You can make it from the all access pass, or you can make it from on the back end by pitching a service or product that you have, but just making sure that it's synonymous with the audience for whatever that product or service is that you're offering. So that's pretty amazing. 72, you said?
78.
$78,000. That is amazing. Like, the power and the possibilities of virtual summits, my friends.
You guys, if you would have told me like a year ago that I would have been able to say that, I would have just laughed at you. I was like,
amazing. Amazing. So can you talk about the Summit in a Box, which I'm a part of, and I'm looking forward to being able to increase my revenue goals as well when I do my virtual event using Krista's methodology and system. So can you talk a little bit about that as well?
Yeah, so Summit in a Box is our signature program. It even comes with a box, and it has every template, training, resource, every piece of information you need to host a summit. And the reason I created it was because with that first summit I ever hosted, I was like, how do I do this? I couldn't find any resources, and I made it all up myself, and it worked. But it was an insane amount of work. And when people started asking for my help, I kind of saw that, like, I want them to be able to do this, but I don't want it to take like 500 hours of their time trying to figure out, hope that it works, make everything from scratch, when I have all these templates I could share. So it has the training videos. So it walks you step by step. Here's the strategy for each step of the process. But I took it a step further and also said, okay, here's how you promote your summit. Here's a marketing plan, an email scheduler, the email templates, social media templates, graphic templates, everything you'll need. And we did that for every single step of the process. So we have over 1,000 copy templates, website templates, graphic templates, tutorials, everything you need to host a summit.
And who doesn't want the ease of being, I mean, planning an event period is stressful. It's a lot of moving parts, but if you can get the information beforehand, so you don't have to think about all these things like the templates, the strategy, the marketing plan, and you could just focus on what you need to bring to the table, I think it will save you time and save you money. So thank you so much, Krista, for being here. You dropped amazing gems, but can you let us know, what is one last gem that you'd like to leave us with? It could be event related, it could be life related, whatever you want to talk about.
Yes, the last gem I will give you guys is just encouragement that you can host a summit. If I could do it with being very pregnant and then having a newborn during the summit, having a small audience, feeling like people were literally going to laugh at me every step of the way, just being terrified, and have it work, you guys can do it too. You don't need a huge email list. You don't need to be this big name person. You don't need to feel like you have all this extra time to do it. You just need to decide that you're going to figure out what you're going to bring to the table for your audience, and just embrace your excitement about helping them get to that next level that you're helping them get to, and just take it one step at a time from there.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here. Let people know how they could follow you, stay connected with you before we end.
Yes, you guys can find me and all kinds of summit information over at summitinabox.co or on Instagram at summitinabox. I'd love to chat with you guys there.
Thank you for listening. Please like, share, and subscribe, and I'll talk to you soon.